Hello, I wanted to make this video because I recently had an interview with Microsoft and I wanted to explain to you guys, how the process went, what interview questions I was asked, and possibly any advice that I probably feel you guys can take from it. And if you guys want to probably apply to Microsoft, how to do it, and what the process would be like. So actually, I didn't apply to Microsoft. I actually got messaged on LinkedIn by a Microsoft recruiter. This was probably a couple weeks ago. So actually, 3 weeks 3 weeks ago, I wrote her and I was like, I'm interested in the position of Microsoft. Is there, what are the next steps? So what she pretty much did is she wrote me back and she said, okay, I'm gonna go. We're gonna have an interview tomorrow, that next day, and we're gonna talk about your qualifications, your resume, and just make sure that you're at least qualified or pre-qualified to go to the next steps. So pretty much what I did was I sent her my resume. She looked at my resume. She called me the next day. The call actually took about, it was a lengthy call actually. It took about 30-40 minutes, I would say. And I just spoke about my resume. Well, pretty much what I said was, my name is Abraham Velasquez. I went to University of Central Florida, graduated with a computer science degree from 2014. From there, I ended up getting a full stack position at Deloitte Consulting, and I've been there for 4 years. And what I did is pretty much I went through those 4 years explaining the top 2-3 projects that I had and exactly what I did in those projects. What languages did I use, what other technologies and tools I use, what was the project about, what contributions did I make. While I was working there too, I had other side gigs. So I worked as a TA at the UCF Coding Bootcamp. I also did a little startup with my friend, which we actually got funded. So that was something that I actually spoke about. And after that whole thing, in June of this year, I actually ended up consulting for a company for a couple of months. So I was able to give my whole resume and explain everything I had done these past, 4 or 5 years in the industry that I've been. So after that call, she really liked me, my experience, and everything that I had done. So she was like, okay, tomorrow or sometime this week, I'm gonna send you a link to take the coding exam. And pretty much you have probably 24 hours or 48 hours to take the exam and before it expires. So I waited probably a day or two and the exam was sent to me on my email. And when I clicked the exam, it was about 1 hour. And the three questions there was 3 questions and I had an hour to do them. So pretty much what I did for each question, I made sure that I wrote a good solution, probably the most optimized. I did do some comments talking about test cases and different examples, and I also wrote the time complexity, and those are also always things that I write when I do coding interviews. The first one of the questions were a Fibonacci question, and pretty much I did that in time using dynamic programming. Another question was to sort like k-element numbers, and I did that with quicksort because it does do better than most sortings. Most sortings do n squared, and not quicksort, heap sort. Heap sort gives you n log n, and I really like that sorting algorithm. I personally have always liked it, so that's why I always use it instead of merge sort, but it doesn't really matter because you get the same answer. And then the third question was pretty much turning a number to a binary number and then converting it to a tuple, depending how much ones and zeros there are. So what I did on that is pretty much I thought of the first of the non-optimized way first. So what I did was I did the mod 2, and then I divided the number by 2 through a loop array. and then the most optimized version would be a loop but using bitwise operator. So I was able to, within a time constraint, do both the regular optimized version of the question, and for Fibonacci, I always do dynamic. So I always solve it using memoization and the quick. And for sorting, obviously you have all these sorting algorithms. I usually lean towards, if you're gonna do sorting, do merge sort because it's n log n, or do heap sort, which is n log n, instead of the other ones which are n squared. And after that, I submitted it within an hour. And actually, about 2 days later, I got an email saying, "Congrats, you passed the coding interview, and we want to fly you to Seattle." So I was very excited, very stoked. Pretty much the process, I sent all my information, and pretty much they booked my flight. They booked my hotel in Redmond, Washington. It was a really nice hotel. They rented a car for me. My plane ticket was really cool. And actually, this whole thing happened within 2 week time frame, because she called me, probably was a Monday. I had the test probably a Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I knew probably the next day, the day after that. And then they wanted me to fly to Washington the next Friday. So pretty much the whole thing lasted 2 weeks. So I got flown in on Thursday, and I pretty much, so they pretty much pay for 2 nights, and if you can stay as many nights as you want, you'll just have to pay those extra days. So they pay for 2 nights of hotel, of car, of food, up to $75. And I mean, I really enjoyed myself. I ate at great places. I roamed around the city. I went to Seattle, downtown. I actually visited one of my cousins in Portland, and it was a great opportunity. Now, the interview was on Friday. So on Friday, what I did is the interview started from 8:30 to 1 o'clock. So, and it was I was gonna interview with 4 people. So I woke up at 7 in the morning, got dressed, ate breakfast or whatever. When I got on Microsoft, and once I got there, I waited in the lobby. About 8:30, we got shown around the building, and the recruiter spoke to us about what to expect, and uh, we pretty much spoke to some of the managers that were there. At 9 o'clock, I was sent to a conference room and me by myself, and there was actually other people there because they were interviewing. So they went to their own conference room, and I had my own conference room, and I was actually in that room the whole entire day. And it was crazy because it's pretty much your interviewing from 9 o'clock when it actually started to 1 o'clock. So the first interview came at 9 o'clock. She came in, and for about 10 minutes, I spoke about my experience, things that I've done, and I spoke to her about one of my projects, things that I have done. And then she pretty much gave me a coding question. She gave me an implementation of a stack. And actually, I felt like every question I did good besides this one, and I'm going to tell you why. Even though I know how to implement a stack because it's super easy, that week I was doing so many like def for search, ref for search, doing a lot of queues, and doing in C++ because I usually do all my coding interviews in C++. In C++, when you use the STL library, if you use a stack or a queue, you use the same function called push. And there's a lot of functions that have the same name. And when she told me to implement a stack, for some reason, I started doing everything as a queue. And it was not even, it was like probably into the end when I was like, oh, I'm implementing this as a queue and not a stack. And probably that's where one of the things that probably deducted points from. But either way, I had to implement a stack, some of the functions, and explain to them the step-by-step process that I had. After that hour, after that, the last 5 minutes, I asked for questions about the team and different questions, probably 5 minutes. So the whole thing lasted about 45, 50 minutes. And then I had probably those 10 minutes for a break. I went to the restroom or drank water, then went back to the room. The second person that came, they gave me, it was a really weird question. It was pretty much you have like an HTML file or file, and it has different tags with nodes, and those nodes have children. How would you like iterate through that? So the way I did it is I pretty much did a binary search tree. I coded this in C++. They gave me some APIs. He wrote in the whiteboard APIs that I could use, and I pretty much iterated through the file, inserting all the values in a binary search to insert it, because binary search usually is a good algorithm to insert values. And if you want to search values, delete values, you're running log n time. So it was really good optimized. Then after that, that lasted for about, the first 10 minutes, it was the same thing. I spoke about my experience. The next 30, 40 minutes, we did the whiteboard interview. In the last 5 minutes, I asked them questions. And then after that, I had another 10 minutes. The third interview was pretty much I had to implement how when you turn a string into a number in C++, that would be like a toy. So how would I implement actually that a toy function? And the way I pretty much did it was I turned the string into characters, and then those characters I put them into an array, and then I did like a for loop, and I had to make sure that I did like a POW of making sure that the first number was a hundredths or tenths or ones. Kind of hard to explain, but I pretty much did the whole thing in n time. Maybe it was or wasn't the best solution, but I feel like I did pretty well. I coded everything well overall. When I was done, I was like, wow, I actually did this, because I had never implemented that before. And that was a great problem to solve. It was kind of tricky. I spoke about all the test cases. Obviously I spoke about test cases. I gave examples. I tried to come up with the best logarithm optimization, and pretty much just made sure that everything I was doing correct. And then the last interviewer was from 12 to 1, was more of the design question, and they asked me how would I design a cell phone, like a contacts list. So I pretty much had to go through, how would I design a database, the back end, the front end, how everything would talk to each other, what functions would be applied or come up. Or so you pretty much have to go through the whole process and talk to the person as if you're really architecting this contact list, or whatever they ask you. But it was more of a design question. There was a lot of questions going back and forth, and I felt like my communication was really well done. And I usually tend to do well in design questions because that's what I do at work. So I felt like I did pretty well. After that interview, it was over. They actually gave us a box to eat food for lunch. So we ate lunch, and then that was it. But actually, after that, one of the guys told me to go to Building 92. So if you ever are in the Microsoft campus, go to Building 92. It's awesome. There's like Xbox games that you can play. There's like a little shopping store. There's like VR. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that you can actually go do. It's actually open to the public, so anybody can actually go in there. But usually, a lot of people don't know about it. But if you ever end up going, go through there. And then actually that was Friday, so probably Monday or Tuesday, the recruiter called me that I didn't get the position. She said that overall I did really great. However, probably didn't feel like my coding skills were coding skills were good, but not all my algorithm functions were like optimized. I mostly feel like I did really good besides the first question, but I know that there were other people interviewing, so I know there's probably competition. And for those type of interviews, you have to do really well, especially if the other people are interviewing. You have to do better than other people, and if you're not doing better, then your chances of getting it aren't that high. And I'm just glad that I got the opportunity to interview with them. It was a great experience. It went extremely fast because I didn't expect for that interview process to go at that pace. Uh, but it was good. I had a lot of fun, and maybe I'll apply again to another company. You know, I've applied, you know, to Facebook, to Google, and I have had interviews with Facebook. I have had interviews with Google, and Microsoft and Amazon actually, but this is my first in person with a top tech company, and I feel like I've been doing better, because when I had my first Google and Facebook interview 2 years ago, and I didn't get it. I didn't get through uh, the coding interview. And now with Microsoft this year, I actually studied a little bit more, and I was able to go to in on site. So who knows if next time, you know, if I decide to apply later on, I'll be able to go to on site and pass it and get an offer. But you know, that also depends if I'm interested at that time to work. But we'll see what happens. But that was my experience. If you guys have any questions, let me know.